This isn't going to end well for you, Blake. Sorry. None of it was just due to the fact that she seems like a rather person.
He is, his agent is Ari Emanuel. He's a powerful Hollywood guy, and we all respond to Hollywood power. And there's a hypocrisy and a fraudulence there that the public is picking up on. And so that's really interesting. Now,
a lot of it's my real life clothes or my husband's clothes or my girlfriend Gigi's clothes. I was borrowing some.
Wait, that's kind of amazing. So you have something of Gigi's in the movie.
Yeah, it's like a wedding, like something old, something borrowed, something blue, something new.
Wait, which one? Now I want to think of the scene.
Oh, I'm wearing her stuff all over it.
Oh, really?
Tons of like Bodhi, which is with the suit now that I'm wearing is Bodhi. It was meant for my husband, but I borrowed it.
His suit?
It was meant for him to wear, but it's so pretty. Look at it. You guys are not getting it in the shot.
Well, I'm a romance. I love romance. I'm a hopeless romantic. Romance is like everywhere in my life, but I had never read a romance novel, and I didn't understand why. And I'm sure a part of that has to do with like, you know, my unconscious subscription to like, you know, the man box and like, I shouldn't, you know, that's not manly. But I read this novel and I couldn't even finish it.
I was like making like, I don't know, juice with like, there was this like maple water on set and I was like, oh, water tapped from a maple tree. This is exciting. But instead of just like handing him a plastic red cup that I was drinking out of, I like went and got the martini glass, a crystal glass, and like shook it up for him properly because you can't hand that man a red cup.
No.
Like, and so he's like standing on a dock with like mud around and he's holding a crystal martini glass. It was just juice and maple water.
So it's a bit of a tough adjustment in our house, but it's good. I mean, I have two other daughters, so my oldest is very into the baby, but my middle child, not so much. But we're thinking of keeping her.
Does she like play with her? What does she think?
Well, she sort of like pretends to play with her. So like in the beginning, our oldest is like loving on her, and she's like very maternal, and then our middle daughter is just keeps away from her.
And we went into the audition, and he signed in, and then the casting director came out and said, Blake? And Eric said, yep, that's her. And I just thought I was gonna die. And she said, we don't have you on our call sheet. And he said, oh, and he put his agency's name. And so I auditioned, and I didn't know what to say in that moment. I was 16, and my brother had just written my name on a piece of paper, and they were looking at me, so I walked in the room and did the audition.
Oh, it's so hard. I mean, look, first of all, being a director is a very lonely job, and there's a lot of pressure. And I think the only way that I got through it is I just surrounded myself with people that were so much smarter than me. As it relates to the acting part, it's a heavy load to carry. I wanted to do as much justice as I could to survivors by making Ryle as truthful as possible.
We always tease each other. He was, you know, after I gave birth, he was like, oh my gosh, you know, if I lost you and I, you know, went to the park with our 3 kids, I mean, think of the ladies I could. This is a horrible thing to say. And he's like, I mean, I've got a long list. And I was like, oh, really? Because I just have one on my list. I didn't have anyone on my list.
And then it wasn't funny anymore.
No, it's so much more of a burn. He's like, wait, who? And I was like,
Tell me, and he's guessing.
Think of someone. Bob Newhart. I don't know.
Blake Lively just walked out of court with a devastating blow. And trust me, it's sending shockwaves across Hollywood. A judge flat out denied nearly every motion she filed. And if you're wondering how someone so famous and beloved got trapped in this legal mess, hang on. What started as a straightforward lawsuit has spiraled into a multi-million-dollar nightmare that threatens not just her image, but her entire career. It's not every day we see a star of Blake's caliber face such relentless legal setbacks, and it's about to get even more complicated. The big question is, how did a sweetheart of the silver screen end up in a court battle so messy that it could cost her and her family everything? We're talking possible financial ruin, reputation meltdown, and public humiliation on a grand scale. People are buzzing on social media, with some saying Blake's case is unraveling faster than a cheap sweater. Others wonder if there's more to the story than meets the eye. One thing's for sure, the drama has only just begun. And if the early rulings are any indication, she's in way over her head. Let me just tell you, once you see how this all came crashing down, you'll understand why the entire internet can't stop talking. In this video, we'll explore the spark that lit the fire, the brutal countersuit from Justin Baldoni, the contradictions in Blake's claims, and how Ryan Reynolds is getting dragged right into the center of the storm. And if you thought this would remain a tight-lipped Hollywood dispute, you couldn't be more wrong, because the behind-the-scenes details are getting exposed left and right. So let's get into it. We'll look at every twist and turn to figure out why Blake Lively is losing so badly in court and whether there's any chance she can salvage what's left of her good name. Some believe she's toast. Others think she might pull off a miracle. One thing's certain, after this legal circus, Hollywood won't be the same for her. At first glance, Blake's lawsuit seemed like another case of a celebrity protecting her image from someone who allegedly crossed the line. But the real fireworks began when she dropped a massive legal bomb on Justin Baldoni, accusing him of behavior she found troubling and throwing around a jaw-dropping claim for damages. She didn't just want an apology, she wanted retribution, and a lot of it. Since she's been a household name for years, the media jumped to cover her every word, eagerly painting Justin as the villain of the story. What made this lawsuit so surprising was that, at one point, Blake and Justin appeared friendly, at least on the surface. They had been spotted chatting on set, exchanging professional compliments in interviews, and even joking around at industry events. Fans who followed their respective careers couldn't understand how two seemingly cordial co-stars could end up in such a nasty public fight. But here's the kicker. Once Blake's accusations hit the news, even her biggest supporters started scratching their heads. The details felt murky, and the timeline didn't quite add up. The media coverage escalated quickly. Big outlets took sides, sometimes reporting Blake's allegations as if they were undisputed facts. People wondered if Justin would even bother defending himself, or if he'd just cut a quick settlement check to avoid further scandal. However, Justin's response was anything but quiet. He fought back fiercely, insisting that this lawsuit was packed with exaggerations and that he had a mountain of receipts to prove it. The lawsuit catapulted them both into the spotlight. Blake undoubtedly expected her status as a Hollywood darling to sway public opinion in her favor. For a while, it seemed to work. She had interviews, headlines, and plenty of chatter on social media rallying around her. But all of that was about to change once Justin filed a countersuit so monumental, it made her original claim look like small potatoes. That's when everyone realized that this wasn't just going to be a routine Hollywood dispute. It was on track to become a full-blown legal circus. The moment Justin slapped Blake with his own $400 million counterclaim, the entire narrative shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just about whether he had done something wrong. It became a question of whether Blake's claims were genuine or if she had orchestrated them for some deeper agenda. Even those who initially believed Blake started to pause and wonder if there was more going on behind the scenes. Justin Baldoni's countersuit alleged that Blake's story wasn't just riddled with half-truths. It was crafted to intentionally damage his reputation and take over a project he'd worked hard to secure. He claimed she manipulated everything from social media buzz to mainstream press coverage, feeding the public a one-sided tale. According to Justin, she was determined to paint him as the villain, to strong-arm him into submission. One of the biggest surprises in his counterclaim was the sheer volume of alleged evidence. Court documents hinted that Justin's legal team had text messages, emails, and even unreleased footage that could poke holes in Blake's narrative. He presented these findings like a mic drop, implying that if Blake wanted a legal fight, he was more than ready to bring it on. Suddenly, Blake's team went from playing offense to defense. Every new piece of evidence Justin teased made it look like her version of events might not stand up to scrutiny. Observers started comparing it to some of the more notorious celebrity legal clashes in recent years, where the supposedly weaker side came out swinging hard with evidence that disrupted the entire conversation. Now, the court of public opinion was in a tailspin. Was Blake really a victim who deserved sympathy, or did she have ulterior motives? Did Justin truly have an ironclad case, or was he just throwing out big numbers to intimidate her into backing off? With so many unanswered questions, people turned to social media, demanding transparency and calling for the release of those rumored texts and videos. The result? A total media frenzy. One that caught Blake's team off guard and revealed just how quickly public perception could flip when a carefully controlled narrative starts to unravel. If there's one thing that can topple a celebrity's claims faster than any courtroom bombshell, it's cold, hard receipts. Justin Baldoni's legal filings suggest he has plenty of them, and they supposedly show a very different picture than the one Blake painted in her lawsuit. While Blake claimed she felt extremely uncomfortable and even harassed, Justin's side pointed to text messages, where she appeared enthusiastic about working with him, praising his directorial style and even cracking jokes alongside him. It wasn't just text messages that caught people's attention. Word started spreading about behind-the-scenes video clips filmed during a project they'd been collaborating on. In these clips, Blake supposedly looks perfectly at ease, laughing, giving Justin friendly feedback, and generally exhibiting none of the discomfort she later described. Granted, we all know people can act differently in public versus private settings, but if these videos contradict her central allegations, that's a huge problem for her case. Meanwhile, fans and commentators on social media acted like an army of amateur detectives. They dug up old interviews, red carpet footage, and random paparazzi shots of Blake and Justin chatting amicably. Each new post was accompanied by a wave of comments questioning her narrative or labeling her a liar. Hashtags supporting Justin started trending, with folks demanding more transparency about these so-called receipts he had up his sleeve. Blake, for her part, seemed unprepared for this level of scrutiny. She found herself scrambling to control the story, possibly hoping that the court's rulings would shut down Justin's ability to speak publicly. But the judge's denial of a gag order put an end to that plan. Now, Justin and his lawyer had full freedom to discuss evidence in the media, which they used to cast serious doubt on her allegations. What really made people's jaws drop, though, were claims that Blake had herself engaged in humor and dialogue that directly contradicted the pure victim persona she was trying to project. Texts appeared to show her making off-color jokes, the same kind she later pinned on Justin as being inappropriate. If that's true, it's more than a minor slip. It's a glaring contradiction that could torpedo her credibility in front of both a judge and the public. Of course, you can't bring up Blake Lively without also mentioning Ryan Reynolds. They're one of Hollywood's most recognized power couples, so it was only natural that he'd come to her defense. Sources close to the situation claimed he was pulling strings behind the scenes, possibly leaning on his own industry connections to help Blake manage public perception. The plan seemed straightforward at first: show a united front and present Blake as someone who'd been treated unfairly. But as the case got more complicated, Ryan's strategy started to backfire in a big way. He made a cameo appearance on a high-profile TV special, supposedly to lighten the mood, and tried to incorporate a few jokes about the ongoing legal drama. Instead of charming viewers, he unleashed a wave of negative responses. People online were furious that a spouse would joke about an issue that was supposedly serious and even traumatic for his wife. The backlash only intensified when critics pointed out that if Blake's allegations were truly legitimate, wouldn't Ryan be outraged on her behalf, rather than turning the situation into comedic material? Others questioned whether this was yet another sign that something about the entire case felt off. If Blake genuinely felt threatened, how could her husband appear so nonchalant? Ryan's attempts at damage control only fueled the fire further. Red carpet photos from an SNL anniversary event showed the couple smiling and acting carefree, which didn't align with the image of a woman in deep distress over a serious legal matter. Social media erupted, with people labeling the pair tone-deaf and insensitive. Behind the scenes, industry insiders whispered that Ryan might be risking his own career by tying himself so tightly to Blake's case. He's got major film franchises under his belt, lucrative business ventures, and a reputation as a likable, quick-witted superstar. That reputation could easily crumble if this lawsuit paints both of them as manipulative or dishonest. So now the question is, how much longer can he stand by Blake before the fallout hits him too hard? In the early days of Blake's stardom, she seemed to have Hollywood in the palm of her hand. People loved her from her breakout roles, and she cultivated friendships with big names like Taylor Swift and other A-list actresses. But if you take a close look at how her famous friends are reacting now, it's like they've evaporated into thin air. No one's stepping forward with open support, and any loud declarations of Team Blake are noticeably missing from social media. A few months ago, rumors circulated that certain actresses might come forward to share their own negative experiences with Justin Baldoni. The idea was that Blake's claims would be bolstered by more accusations, possibly leading to a "where there's smoke, there's fire" scenario. But here we are, and not one actress has publicly backed her up. If anything, the radio silence suggests that Blake might be on her own. Industry insiders say this is a major red flag. In Hollywood, high-profile lawsuits often draw attention from anyone who can relate or wants to amplify the conversation. The absence of any additional voices is leaving Blake in a pretty precarious position. If the allegations were widely recognized behind the scenes, you'd expect at least one or two people to break ranks and speak out. The silence extends to the media as well. Outlets like the New York Times, which initially seemed sympathetic, are suddenly quiet, no longer championing her cause. Nobody likes to be associated with a losing legal battle, especially when new evidence keeps popping up that challenges the initial narrative. It's starting to look like a classic case of the Hollywood freeze-out. Once the industry senses a star's downfall, they fade away to protect themselves. It's a tough pill for Blake to swallow because she likely counted on her circle of influential friends for moral and public support. Instead, it appears they'd rather keep their distance and watch how this fiasco plays out, Whether that's because they suspect she isn't telling the whole truth or simply don't want their own brands tarnished, one thing's certain, Blake is quickly running out of allies. When you're a Hollywood star, especially one half of a power couple, you might look financially invincible. Blake's net worth is said to be around $50 million, and Ryan Reynolds clocks in at a staggering $350 million, thanks to massive film deals and successful business ventures like Aviation Gin and Mint Mobile. But Justin Baldoni's countersuit demands a whopping $400 million, enough to wipe out Blake and make a serious dent in Ryan's fortune too. Hollywood deals aren't always liquid. A lot of that net worth is tied up in future earnings, partnerships, and investments that could vanish if there's too much negative publicity. Investors don't like uncertainty, and they definitely don't like being associated with a scandal that could stain their brand. If the court rules against Blake in a big way and damages are awarded to Justin, the financial blow could be catastrophic, affecting not just their bank accounts, but the entire web of business relationships they've built. And that's just the money side. Equally critical is how toxic this might make Blake in the eyes of Hollywood's power players. If she's found liable for making false claims, studios will think twice before casting her in any major projects. Directors might not want the headache of dealing with a star whose name conjures up memories of a high-profile court loss. We've all seen how quickly Tinseltown can turn its back when a celebrity's baggage becomes too heavy to carry. It's a cautionary tale, really. People assume that because someone's famous, they're untouchable. But one giant lawsuit can unravel everything. Even if Blake tries to settle out of court, the damage to her credibility might already be done. Sometimes, just the perception that someone was dishonest is enough to blacklist them, especially when tens or hundreds of millions of dollars are on the line. And what about Ryan? He's got major projects lined up, like the next Deadpool installment, that rely on him staying in the public's good graces. If fans turn on him or if producers fear a boycott, that's a financial nightmare. At the end of the day, these big studios are businesses, and they don't gamble on reputations that could jeopardize box office returns. If the public sees them as a toxic duo, it won't just be Blake's future at risk, it'll be Ryan's too. As if the situation wasn't messy enough, Blake's efforts to control the narrative in the courtroom have been a complete failure. She tried filing motions to limit what Justin and his legal team could say publicly, essentially hoping for a gag order to stop the media circus. The judge wasn't having it. In a decisive ruling, the court denied her requests, leaving Justin free to air his side of the story for all to see. The judge also made it clear that Blake doesn't get to pick who questions her. She can't demand a more friendly attorney or avoid certain lines of inquiry just because they're uncomfortable. This means she'll have to face Justin's lawyer head-on in depositions, answering detailed questions that could reveal every inconsistency in her version of events. You can imagine the anxiety this might cause if there are indeed skeletons in her closet. Every time Blake's team loses another legal battle, be it a denied motion or an unfavorable scheduling order, her credibility takes another hit. The courts are essentially signaling that Justin's countersuit has merit. Worse yet, these preliminary rulings suggest that the final trial might be even harsher on her. If she can't get the judge to side with her on the basic stuff, how will she handle the big issues when they come to trial? It's a stark contrast to the expectation Blake likely had when she first filed her lawsuit. She may have banked on a sympathetic judge or the influence of her star power to gain legal advantages. But the law doesn't bend just because you're famous. And if there's one thing that can make or break a case, it's how judges respond to early motions. Those decisions often hint at who has the stronger argument. On top of that, depositions could force the release of all the evidence Justin has been hinting at. If those pieces of evidence confirm that Blake twisted the truth or exaggerated her discomfort for personal gain, the public fallout could be brutal. At this point, she's playing defense on every front, financially, reputationally, and in the court of law. Unless a miraculous settlement appears out of thin air, she's on a collision course with a courtroom showdown that could define her career for years to come. All signs point to a major showdown that might unfold in front of a jury unless a last-minute settlement emerges. But let's be real. Once two parties start hurling lawsuits worth hundreds of millions of dollars, it gets harder to settle quietly. Both sides have invested massive amounts of time, money, and pride into proving they're right. Let me just tell you, if this goes to trial, it'll be one of the most talked about celebrity cases in recent memory. Right now, the possible outcomes look bleak for Blake. If she loses to Justin, she might face financial ruin, especially if the court awards him even a fraction of that $400 million he's seeking. Her credibility would take a nosedive, making her persona non grata in an industry that has no shortage of fresh faces ready to replace her. The same goes for Ryan. If he's perceived as complicit or mocking something that was supposedly serious, it could hurt his image as the witty, lovable star audiences have known for years. On the flip side, if Blake somehow prevails, or even reaches a favorable settlement, she'll need a massive PR campaign to rebuild her reputation. She'd have to show genuine remorse for any misunderstandings and maybe even explain parts of her story that didn't add up. But at this point, it's hard to imagine a scenario where she comes out looking like a fully vindicated hero. The seeds of doubt are planted, and that alone can destroy a reputation in a business that thrives on public perception. Another wild card: Hollywood itself. Studios might be cautiously waiting to see which way the wind blows. If it appears Justin is right, they'll distance themselves from Blake as fast as possible. If, against all odds, Blake manages to prove her case in a compelling way, we could see a wave of support pour in. People love a comeback story, especially when it involves someone they once admired. We also can't ignore the possibility that Ryan might cut his losses to protect his own career. It wouldn't be the first time a Hollywood power couple parted ways under crushing outside pressure. Regardless of whether that's in the cards, it's one more factor swirling around in this chaotic saga. Not too long ago, Blake Lively was seen as a shining example of a Hollywood success story. Talented, well-loved, and with a seemingly perfect family life. Fast forward to today, and she's staring down the barrel of a catastrophic legal defeat, her career on the brink, and a tidal wave of public criticism that's only getting louder. The court has already shown signs of favoring Justin Baldoni's arguments, and every new piece of leaked information puts Blake in an even tighter spot. So how did this all go so wrong? Was it arrogance, a misguided attempt to control a narrative, or was it simply a case of someone thinking they had more power than they actually did? The truth might emerge in the upcoming trial, if it even makes it that far. What's certain is that Blake's entire brand, built on the idea of a classy, relatable star, is hanging by a thread. She may have intended to teach Justin a lesson, but right now, it looks like she's the one scrambling for a way out. It's a dramatic reminder that in Hollywood, fortunes can change overnight. No matter how big your name or how strong your social media following, the combination of legal evidence and public scrutiny can burn through even the thickest layers of star power. Now we're all left asking if Blake can possibly recover from this, or if this marks the permanent end of the golden girl image she once had. I'd love to hear your take on whether Blake Lively can bounce back. Do you think there's a chance she's telling the truth and just can't catch a break in court? Or is this a case of someone who flew too close to the sun and got scorched by her own tactics? Either way, this legal saga is nowhere near over. And you can bet we'll keep watching as more explosive details emerge. One thing is certain, nobody in Hollywood will forget this case anytime soon.